Prynhawn da Nghynhadledd. It's a privilege for us to be here in Caernarfon today, in the Arfon constituency and in the heart of Gwynedd. This is an important part of Wales for Plaid Cymru. Leanne is the outstanding Assembly member and Howell Williams is our dedicated MP. Howell, the people of Arfon were right to put their trust in you once again in June, and I'd like to thank every single one of them who recognised your hard work and commitment to this area. People here know that Wales needs a strong voice, a strong Plaid Cymru voice during the challenges ahead. Before proceeding, I'd like to address the situation in Catalonia. The desire to chart our own course in the world is one we share with other nations. I'm sure many of you, like me, will have watched with horror as their efforts towards self-determination were met by state violence. And now those scenes have been followed by political arrests and a threat to abolish Catalonia's democracy. Frightening scenes reminiscent of Franco's days of fascism. History will condemn that repression, even if the European countries and the EU Commission would not. I say shame on them. Unlike the Welsh Government's response, Plaid Cymru's condemnation was unequivocal, and the Government of Catalonia has thanked us for our support and for our solidarity and asked that it continue in the months ahead. Diolch yn fawr to all those who answered the call for our solidarity, and I especially pay tribute to Plaid ifanc for bearing witness to those historic events. Before I address what we can do to overcome the challenges facing our country, I'd like to reflect on events since we last gathered. We've just been through two different elections, and for the Labour Party and Conservative parties, 2017 will be remembered as a tale of two elections in every way. The Tory triumph in the local elections disappeared in the space of weeks, with their hopes for an increased majority destroyed. Their infighting since has seen the British state plunged into crisis. How can they claim to have strength in the negotiations with the European Union when they are a divided government with no majority? The Westminster elections were, of course, extraordinary. The Electoral Reform Society has said that record levels of tactical voting took place. The downward slide in Theresa May's popularity was apparently unprecedented in any election campaign in UK history. I'm sure many of you would have felt it on the doorstep, as I did. Theresa May went from being the most popular party leader in Wales, according to the polls, to one of the least popular in the space of just 6 weeks. Despite the presidential nature of the campaign and the two-party polarisation, we increased 2 of our 3 majorities and gained a 4th seat. And I'd like to give my sincere congratulations to all 4 of our MPs who've been returned to form a stronger Plaid Cymru team. And I'd like to give special congratulations to Ben Lake, who's in Westminster today. He's voting for legislation to protect members of the emergency services, a fresh, articulate and relentlessly positive voice for Ceredigion. Ben wants our young people to have more opportunities to stay in rural Wales, and he energised them through his campaign. And that's why I'm sure I speak for everyone when I say how thrilled we are to have Ben as our youngest ever MP. Although the UK election dominated the headlines, we cannot and should not forget the local elections which took place in May. Local councils are important to the Party of Wales because they're about representation at the community level, the most basic foundation block of our nation. If we can build strong communities, then the sum of those communities is a strong nation. That's why we take elections to our local councils seriously. And in those elections, Plaid Cymru made the second highest gains of any party in the United Kingdom, just 3 short of our best ever total. And we made those gains right across the country, north and south, in urban and in rural communities. Plaid Cymru has been able to demonstrate a record of delivery in local government, which saw us gain new councillors in places where we run the local authority, not just here in Gwynedd, but in Ceredigion and in Carmarthenshire. And seats were won in other areas too, not least Neath Talbot, from the Cynantaf, and a whole host of other local authorities. In addition to those successes, we are now also leading Ynys Môn. And I'm particularly proud to congratulate Plaid Cymru's Llynos Medi, who is the first ever woman to lead Ynys Môn Council. Da iawn, Llynos. Looking to the future, we must also commend the efforts of our youth movement, Plaid Ifanc, in those elections. We now have the highest ever total of youth members as councillors, which bodes so well for the future. Llongyfarchiadau, and thank you to everyone who stood and to all of you who won in those elections. Diolch o galon. Conference, just as we're delivering locally, we're delivering at the national level too. Our latest budget agreement takes us towards achieving £500 million worth of our manifesto pledges since the 2016 Assembly election. No other opposition party in Wales has ever achieved this. The Cabinet Secretary for Finance admitted that without this deal, the money for those Plaid Cymru commitments would not have been found. And the list is formidable. Here in the north, it includes a National Football Museum, correcting the situation where Wales, after doing so much to inspire Europe last summer, is the only country in these islands without such a record of its footballing history. With our All Wales agenda, we're pushing ahead with the preparatory work for the Carmarthen to Aberystwyth Railway. We've secured additional funding to improve sections of the A470 and the A487. That's something which in government we could upscale in a way that would properly connect north and south, repairing some of the damage from our days as a colonial extractive economy. The budget agreement also means that for the third time, Plaid Cymru has stepped in to protect the Supporting People grant. Supporting people is of great importance here in Caernarfon, where local voluntary organisations asked us to prioritise it, as they did in other parts of Wales. This fund helps to prevent homelessness. I'm sure you will have all noticed the growth in street sleeping in our country. We have further secured commitments for business rate relief on community hydro energy schemes, more budget increases in mental health funding on top of last year's prioritisation, funding towards a power plant to secure the future of Tartar Steel at Talbot, 80 new district nurses, and a whole host of further investments which I don't have the time to list. If we can get £500 million allocated towards our manifesto promises in just over a year from opposition, just imagine what we could do in government. Conference, let me be clear. While the other opposition parties whinge for Wales, Plaid Cymru delivers. Our next job is to make sure that those agreed commitments are implemented by the government. Yet we are under no illusion. After 18 years of Labour government, Wales needs to change. We recognise that while we've been able to influence this minority government, there are some areas where they refuse to make progress. They've watered down our proposals for a medical school in Bangor, when our vision is for full medical training to be available in the north. They've now dropped the potential plan to create an in-house energy company to benefit people in Wales. That defies belief in a country so rich in natural resources. They've refused to lift the NHS pay cap. I was glad to see their U-turn this week after considerable Plaid Cymru pressure on their increase in tuition fees. That demonstrates how Plaid Cymru is still piling on the pressure on the Welsh Government, and we will continue to exert that pressure as they press ahead with the M4 Black Route. We will not allow them to get away with refusing to explore better and more affordable alternatives which take into account the threat of climate change. On welfare reform, let's look at where Labour in Wales stands on decisions about universal credit and housing benefit and all those welfare reforms that are responsible for the rise in homelessness, which is causing a linked spike in drug-related deaths. The truth is that Labour in Wales would prefer those decisions to be taken by the Tories in London than to make better and different decisions here in Wales. That's why next week in our Assembly we will be challenging the Welsh Government to mitigate Westminster's cruel welfare agenda. In its most basic form, devolution should be a defensive shield against the worst excesses of Westminster governments. In its most advanced form, devolution should allow governments to innovate. Wales is failing on both of those counts. It doesn't need to be this way, and with Plaid Cymru, there is a better way. Conference, there are major changes facing this nation. Governments at both ends of the M4 seem unable and unwilling to withstand the threats to our nationhood. The way that the EU withdrawal is being carried out is a clear threat, not just to our economy, but to our constitution. The Conservative UK government risks driving the economy off the cliff through botched Brexit negotiations. Their internal fights and election gamble have led them to pursue the most reckless negotiating strategy imaginable. They risk leaving the European Union on bad terms, plunging the British state into a crisis. Paying no regard to the interests or the needs of the Welsh economy, the Tory cabinet is stuck, playing a game of deal or no deal. An illegal opinion published by our party has demonstrated that the Tory EU withdrawal bill will infringe upon the powers of our National Assembly. So when a special status within the single market could be on the table for the north of Ireland, and Scotland has a mandate to call an independence referendum in the future, Wales needs its own solution. This country voted to leave the European Union, but there was no vote on leaving the single market. In the face of the Conservatives ignoring Welsh needs, we need a twin-track approach. A Plaid Cymru government would be prepared for every possible scenario when it comes to our future relations with the European Union. Key sectors like agriculture, manufacturing, car making would receive our full support through an active industrial and exports strategy. Thousands of jobs were saved after the financial crisis 10 years ago when our party in government backed the ProAct and the REACT schemes. And a Plaid Cymru government would have already set up a Brexit preparedness fund. As part of this, we would create a Brexit self-assessment tool for business. Firms would be able to assess their exposure to changing trade conditions and make applications to the Welsh Government for assistance. Our priority would be retaining the jobs and skills we need, and our message would be clear. With Plaid Cymru, there will never be a return to deindustrialisation. Our communities paid too heavy a price for unforgivable inaction in the past. We will not let that happen again. The second track of the approach is to watch the unfolding Brexit process like hawks. We will do everything in our power to protect the Welsh national interest. The Party of Wales is committed to guaranteeing every single pound of funding received by our agricultural sector. We're also committed to upholding European environmental, social and human rights standards. If the Welsh Government doesn't do it, we will publish our own continuity bill to enshrine the very highest regulations and protections for our environment and our society. And if any Westminster government wants to take us to court to stop us, then I say to them, bring it on. We are not giving up the fight to stay in the European single market and customs union. Plaid Cymru has been rock solid on this question since day one. There is no other post-referendum scenario which is better for the Welsh economy. If the UK government does pull all of the nations out of the single market against the wishes of their governments and parliaments, they will trigger a constitutional crisis. The Party of Wales has repeatedly said that any deal offered by the UK government to other UK nations must be available to Wales. If the UK ceases to exist, Wales must have the right to decide our own future in a referendum. And if, in the worst possible scenario, we leave the European Union without a deal, people must have the opportunity to reject that disastrous outcome, either through a public vote or through parliamentary democracy. The British government can avoid a constitutional crisis if it has the political will. So my advice to the UK government is stop fighting amongst yourselves and start listening to the Welsh and the Scottish parliaments. It should also start listening to the voices of those who will most be affected by the fallout from the referendum result. Those EU citizens and their families who are already living here. Those valuable citizens who are contributing to our society. As living standards have been squeezed and wages have stagnated because of austerity, there's been an interest on the part of some to give the impression that immigrants are to blame. Nghynhadledd. Mae Plaid Cymru wedi arwain yr ymgyrch I herio'r myth mewn fido. Pam? Achos gweledigaeth Plaid Cymru yw un o wlad ble mae pawb yn byw gyda'i gilydd, heb ofn na bygythiad. Mae'r Gymru ydy'r eisiau ei chreu yn un ble mae pawb yn gymdogion da, ble mae pawb yn parchu amrywiaeth ein gilydd, ble ein bod yn cydweithio ac uno. Cymru unedig ble nad ydym yn gweld bai ar grwpiau lleiafrifol problem sydd wedi tyfu gyda'r toriadau. Mae'r negeseuon hyn yn bwysig i'w dweud eto yn sgil y trafodaethau Brexit. Dyma neges Plaid Cymru I bob dinesedd Ewropeaidd. Mae croeso I chi yma heddiw a bydd croeso I chi yma yfory. There are hard-headed economic reasons why we need people from overseas. Citizens from the rest of Europe are likely to generate higher tax revenues than most other groups in our society. They can fill skills gaps in the private sector and in our public services. But there are other reasons as well, like the continuation of history. As Reverend Aled Edwards reminded us, the ancient laws of Hywel Dda give explicit protection to the woman, the disabled person and to the foreigner. Keeping a welcome in the hillside is nothing new. We have a tradition to keep alive, and Plaid Cymru will continue to champion Wales as a country which welcomes people who can make a contribution to our society. We believe in humanity and in compassion. So our message to the UK Prime Minister, Theresa May, is that we support our neighbours and that we demand that our EU citizens are allowed to stay. Conference, Brexit is not our only challenge. A problem that we must address is the disconnect within Wales. There's a great need to connect our nation internally. While both the UK Government and the Welsh Government focus on east-west transport links, it seems Plaid Cymru is the only party interested in connecting Wales. We must face these immediate transport challenges with an all-Wales approach, keeping Wales united. One way we will do this is with a rail revolution. Plans to electrify the Great Western Main Line as far as west as Swansea have been scrapped by the Tory government. Their spurious argument is that there are better alternatives to electrification, and that would be stronger if they were scrapping electrification everywhere. But they aren't. Rather than wring our hands and complain about the Tories, the Party of Wales will respond with a solution. We would issue a rail bond to finance electrification to Swansea and beyond. And we'd put rail electrification on the agenda for the North Wales coastline after years of promises from Westminster. Our ambitious transport plan would see the creation of a metro for the Swansea Bay and Western Valleys region. In fact, we've already secured funding for the outline business case for such an initiative to go ahead. But we wouldn't just stop there. The Carmarthen to Aberystwyth route is the key to revitalising our western coast. It's the linchpin in the creation of an all-Wales rail line that runs the length of our nation. Plaid Cymru's rail revolution would link up the north as well to Pwllheli and beyond to here in Caernarfon. This plan would underpin our regional renewal bill, guaranteeing a fair share of infrastructure investment in every region of Wales. Conference, this is the ambition we need. No other party is taking forward an all-Wales agenda. But under a Plaid Cymru government, our country would finally be united, north and south. Another mission for our party is to improve the skills base of our nation. We face the dual challenge of inequality within Wales and between this country and the UK as a whole. The Resolution Foundation estimates that we are on course for a major slowdown in living standards. This could cause the biggest rise in inequality since the days of Thatcher. At the same time, the wealth gap between Wales and the UK remains wide, and there's no sign of any Welsh Government strategy to close it. The biggest determinants of poverty are whether you have a job and what your wages are. And one of the single largest factors influencing whether a person is in employment and whether they can earn higher wages is, of course, education. How many of you, like me, were brought up on the mantra that education is a route out of poverty? Low productivity is one of our economy's greatest challenges, and according to the Welsh Government's own economic analysis, low productivity bears a close relation to low levels of skills and qualifications. The Party of Wales wants to set a national mission to get all new adults educated to a vocational or university level within a generation. Can we build that thirst for education that people who went before us had? Free higher education remains our ambition when public finances allow. But one thing we certainly would not be doing is making higher education more expensive for students. It's great that the Welsh Government has performed a U-turn this week on their proposed hike in tuition fees, but they should never have proposed that hike in the first place. For those young people returning to or staying in Wales after graduation, not only would Plaid Cymru reduce their tuition costs and keep their maintenance support, but we would also create a substantial programme of postgraduate opportunities. We want to see living and working spaces to support self-employment, funding and support for innovative entrepreneurs, much more support for setting up cooperatives or social enterprises, including tax breaks, grant support for new entrants into the farming industry. To prepare for the challenges of the future, Plaid Cymru wants to work with trades unions and education providers to put in place a full programme of in-work training for the up to 290,000 Welsh workers whose jobs could be at risk because of automation. These measures are in addition to our existing commitments to childcare and those policies which value and support our teachers. Free and comprehensive preschool education for all would ensure that children are starting from the same place and that all children get the same opportunity to succeed. Conference, what we are proposing is nothing short of a sea change in the way that education is linked to the economy. Our nation will be empowered when people are empowered to unleash their full potential. In the past, we in Wales were renowned for our commitment to learning and to education. Plaid Cymru will restore this country's good name. Friends, we don't do what we do because we want to create a little Britain in Wales. We want Wales to be a distinct political entity so that we can create something different, something better, a politics that is centred on community, on cooperation. The two establishment parties are not able to meet Wales's needs. The Tories are offering more austerity and the vague promise of a British dream. And Labour are unable to offer anything other than centralising solutions which have no regard for the specific interests of Wales. I have always believed that to change our country, we need to do it from the bottom up. And that's why community action is so important to us. Our members are active in their communities, working hard with others to reverse the effects of austerity. Whether it's Kenny Khan's Cafe and Kitchen on the public estate here in Caernarfon, the Saith Seren Centre in Wrexham, or our recently reopened paddling pool in Pennegraig Park, these services matter to people. When they shut them down, people lose hope and they think that politics has failed them. Let me tell you what it means to people when Plaid Cymru helps to provide solutions. I remember seeing our local pool closed down 4 years ago against the will of the community, and I visited the site shortly after my election as Rhondda AM, and I supported the children's calls for it to be reopened. There was cynicism. We were told we couldn't do it. People said they'd heard it all before. Nothing would happen, they told us. But months later, as a community, we did it. And by reaching out to young people and others to grow the volunteer base, we brought the community together too. Now the volunteers are ready to tackle the next project. These are all examples where Plaid Cymru members are working with others to make their communities more resilient. The answer to combating austerity is not to wait for parties or governments to change colour in Westminster, but to do it ourselves, to roll up our sleeves and end our dependence ourselves. So I call on all Plaid Cymru members to be the change you want to see. Show how we believe in Wales by empowering our people. Friends, following this conference, I'll be undertaking a full tour of community meetings across the country. The aim is to reconnect our party with people in all communities and to outline the arguments for decisions about Wales to be made in Wales. The aim is to talk about how we can improve our democracy, to build a national network which embeds Plaid Cymru in towns and villages the length and breadth of the country. We will build the foundations of our next manifesto on practical community action, Plaid Cymru in your street, building the nation and strengthening our communities. And I encourage everyone, who cares about the future of Wales to get involved. Conference, it's 20 years since Wales first voted yes in the 1997 referendum. And 20 years ago, I led one of my predecessors, Gwynfor Evans, onto the stage of our national conference in Aberystwyth. That was a symbolic transition from one generation to another. I was 25 years old then. I'd been a councillor for 2 years. I wasn't alone in being full of hope for the period of self-government that was ahead of us. There are a handful of areas where our country has outperformed expectations since then, not least where Plaid Cymru led the way with an idea or a proposal, but only a handful. It hasn't been enough. Policies like organ donation, improved recycling, or creating the National Coastal Path are achievements which shouldn't be belittled. Those limited successes prove that there's nothing inherently wrong with Wales that means we can't succeed in important areas of policy, but they are nowhere near enough. The point of devolution was to make things better, but in too many cases it's been the opposite. I first stood for election to the National Assembly back in 2003. I wanted to see big changes to this country. I didn't become a full-time politician to tinker around the edges. I'd been a probation officer, a women's aid support worker. I'd done factory work, bar work, supermarket till work. In those jobs and in my upbringing, I'd been exposed to the difficulties people face in life. I've had a fair few challenges of my own. I've seen firsthand how the system is stacked against you if you're poor, if you're disabled, or if you have mental health problems. Through my involvement in politics, I've been aware of how Wales has been held back, and for how many people this has meant low pay, emigration, bad housing, and an NHS under constant pressure. After being governed from afar by people who were out of touch with people's lives in this country, it was a real breakthrough to win that yes vote back in 1997. But 20 years on, our country hasn't fulfilled its potential. And when we consider the problems people in Wales face now and the challenges we face in the future, we can see that our National Assembly is not yet equipped to tackle all of those problems. The case for more powers is incontrovertible, and that is Plaid Cymru's mission, to empower ourselves to solve our own problems, to end our dependence on others. There's no need for that dependence. I know we could be so much better without it. And that's why our campaign to lead the Welsh Government in 2021 has to go hand in hand with a push to govern ourselves. The 2021 elections will be the first elections to a new Welsh Parliament. The potential and the opportunity that comes with that is to turn it into an institution that is empowered to address the problems people face in this country, as well as building the resilience to withstand future shocks and threats. There will be an opportunity for political change. Friends, Plaid Cymru must lead that change, and I intend to lead it as our candidate for First Minister. In 2021, there will be only two options: more of the same or change for the better. But Wales faces challenges in the here and now. The tied vote for First Minister last year gave our party the ability to change Labour's agenda, to use our influence. We exploited that situation and we created a deal which would improve people's lives in Wales by securing as many of our manifesto commitments as we could. Wales is better off as a nation when the Labour Party doesn't have a majority. If you want a flavour of what a Party of Wales government would mean, then take a look at our record of achievement from opposition. We have used our leverage to create the green shoots of an alternative programme of government. A government which would fulfil the 1997 promise of building the new Wales. an all-Wales government ensuring that no part of the country is left behind when it comes to jobs, opportunity and investment. One that would build a nation of ambition, a nation of justice. One that would not recreate Wales and the geographic inequalities that categorise the British state, so that decisions could be made to help communities in Cardiff, in Carmarthen and in Caernarfon. Friends, like Wales, Plaid Cymru has faced great challenges. Yet resilience has always been our watchword. Ideas have always been our currency, and providing hope has always been our purpose. I have the full confidence that we can continue our forward journey as a party. And in the coming years, that means a journey towards government. The prize available to us, if we are united, is the greatest prize of all, the trust of our people here in Wales to lead their government. Plaid Cymru exists to empower the people of Wales so that we can do more for ourselves. To the citizens of Wales, I want to say that I accept that we need to earn your trust. You've just voted in the most dramatic election for decades, but Plaid Cymru and I are ready to serve your interests. We have the ideas and the ambition to show a new way for Wales. Based on our All Wales agenda, we will build a new nation. What we've achieved this autumn is just the beginning, the green shoots of a future Wales. To those people and communities which have already placed their faith in Plaid Cymru, we will not let you down. We will always go the extra mile to deliver on your behalf. To those who are looking for a new Wales and for a party that can change Wales, we will prove to you that we have what it takes, together. The future of Wales depends on this party, Plaid Cymru, stepping forward with the solutions to unite the country in the belief that there is nothing we cannot achieve together. Now is the time to decide what our new Wales could look like, its values, its ambitions, the hopes of its people. So join with me and let us build that new Wales together. Diolch yn fawr.